Kia ora, thank you everybody, councillors, thank you for having me here today. I'm unsure if you know much about the Lightfoot initiative. We're an active travel charity based in Queenstown, focusing on changing behaviours across the Queenstown Lakes District. So just like you guys, we're people that work full time, but we now have quite a large staff, having been operating for about 4.5 years. So we've now grown into having a crew of about 10 employees actually, who are working in that space for us, which is really great. And what that does, it speaks to the fact that at the moment there is a real focus and a need and a desire for some changes in how we use transport. So most specifically, with regards to public transport, we made our submission. We assume it's taken as read, so I won't necessarily talk to that. But what I am here to do today is to urge you to take bold action. So that's the phrase that we've adopted for our vision to 2035. And I am saying to you that now is the time to seize the day, carpe diem, let's make things happen, and start thinking more broadly beyond buses. I'm aware that your CE had a fantastic trip overseas recently to look at some other options to do with public transport in terms of moving people really rapidly in a confined geographical space like Queenstown, with the work that's being done with the Queenstown Cable Car and Southern Infrastructure Group. And we strongly support that initiative from their part. We're aware that there is movement happening in the ferry space, and again, that is an area that we think needs further investment and development from the Otago Regional Council. However, the primary point that I would like to make today, rather than just supporting those other initiatives, is to really think carefully about how we are moving school children. That's one of my key points, is that we know that there is, your very capable and able transport team are trying to come up with some great solutions for that. There are wraparound services that need to take place to make parents want to put their children on those public buses, and that's something that needs to be considered by ORC, along with things like changes to the schedule and capacity. So they're considerations that must be taken into account. One of the other things we know is that there's a huge amount of growth happening right now, and that the services we currently have don't speak to that growth. The plans suggested in the regional consultation that you've done also, I think, don't address them adequately enough. So more work needs to be done in that space. Now, thinking carefully about what's happening at a regional level, we know that there's a lot of consideration taking place around what's happening in Wanaka and Cromwell and Alex, and to link up those places. But we urge you to consider the development that's happening south of Kingston, because what we do know is that that beautiful green area space, greenfield space out there, I'm talking Athol and Garston and some of those areas, that before we can blink an eye, they will become subdivisions and those people will be heading towards Queenstown. So we need to be thinking with that long lens that it's not just out towards central Otago, that it's reaching south as well. So my question is, what are we going to do about that? And by we, I say we, because this is part of a partnership and we've all got to get this sorted, because frankly, I'm sick of sitting in traffic. And I'm sure if you guys are based here, you would be too. So the final point that I would like to make is that I would like to see more action from ORC. Lightfoot has a membership base of about 1,000 people. So we think we represent quite a large group of people. And what we're all saying is that we're prepared to make more investment in our rates to see increases and improvements in public transport and how it's provided in Queenstown Lakes. So at the moment, I personally, my household pays $100 a year towards transport. Yes, I come from a certain demographic where perhaps that $100 doesn't have a huge impact on me. We think there are a lot of people in Queenstown who would be happy to see that amount actually doubled, which really is still quite a small amount, to see a significant increase in what can be provided. Now, it's still only a drop in the bucket, and we urge you as well to take a stronger, more aggressive, brackets, assertive stance with the government, with Ministry of Transport, with Waka Kotahi, NZTA, and we urge you to think about how the next government policy statement can actually better reflect what is needed. That is the key thing that has to happen, and that's my final point, is that we need to be working better to push that forward instead of looking backwards to what we did in the 20th century. Thank you very much for having me today. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for the work that you're doing for the community as well. We really appreciate it. Okay,
thank you very much, Amanda. Maybe some questions before we go. Thank you for
Great.
a very clear and a clear message. And I think the word we need to be bold. You made that pretty clear in your written submission. You reinforced that again today. But I'll just check with some questions. I'll just go to Elliot if there's any questions for Amanda.
Kia ora, Amanda. Thanks for your presentation and the work the Lightfoot initiative does in the community. So what I sort of gathered there towards the end is that you'd like more advocacy from us to central government in terms of shaping the next GPS to be something that's a bit more supportive of public transport, to say the very least.
Yeah.
But then also that the community is comfortable with ORC in terms of rates supporting increases to levels of service and stuff in the public transport network and extensions of routes and stuff. Given the current funding environment, aside from potentially trying to reshape the next GPS into something better, with this current GPS looking at government co-funding and where they see our priorities and stuff like that is, do you think that level of comfort with ratepayers paying a bit more to support more would extend as far as covering the entirety of the cost of new services if government was not to support co-funding because it doesn't align with their priorities? Or is that contingent on that sort of government co-funding?
I think government co-funding is always going to be a reality because public transport systems never operate in a way that the public could fully fund them. That would be my statement. But I think the key thing is that we can't do anything about the current policy statement. It's recognised that a fare increase may need to happen. The key thing is that if that does happen, that needs to come down once changes are made in the future, so it doesn't just stay at a fixed rate. The second thing is that it's essential to temperature check all of this with the public, and more importantly, the way that you sell the vision of what's possible actually with that increased funding. So by showing them actually with a great comms strategy what can be achieved with incremental changes to the funding is really essential. And still having those things built into the system which make it so that lower income people or people, in terms of an equity aspect, that people aren't going to be disadvantaged who genuinely need the support. So there's so many factors to it, which I'd be more than happy to discuss at another time in lots of detail. But independently funding it on our own, I can't see the public ever agreeing to that. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that clarity there, Amanda. Cheers.
Kate?
Thank you. I appreciate that the funding here is rather difficult because you've got a huge population using potentially bus services who don't pay rates anyway and barely contribute. I mean, yes, staying in a hotel or whatever, or flying in, airports I don't even think are rated potentially well. So the tourists on there aren't paying their rates and contributing to 50% of the funding. So, but it does make me realise you're a charitable trust. We've been asked to do things differently. You know that you've got 1,000 members who are really actively involved in this. If they all gave $100 more, rather than us rating people, the number of submissions we've got saying, and we haven't even opened the annual plan ones yet, saying we can't afford these things. And I appreciate that every community will have the people who are privileged, like you and I probably are, and that some aren't. And putting something that's mandated through rate system is really tough. If we could use a charitable trust and build a partnership where we seek that funding and work actively to prioritise the new routes, so that people actually are vested in that decision-making process as well. Would that be a model that would be sustainable? Or at least would give you the advocacy as a trial to go to the next GPS and say to the government, this is why we need the funding?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation that could certainly be had, and it's a logical conversation that could happen. I think at a micro level, people's ability to pay a bus fare is actually completely fine. And if we're thinking about where that $100 extra in rates is coming from, is that sitting with the property owner? Is it sitting with the people renting the property, considering that there's also a lot of properties that are used for Airbnb and that are rental properties? So it's unpacking that in a lot more detail. In terms of your ability individually as a regional council to advocate with, and to push things with the government, it's quite limited. But if you think about collectively at a national level, the regional councils and the district councils and the pressure that they can put on as a collective unit, working together, with the GPS, that's where the power comes into it, with your ability to change direction with things.
Yep.
So that's what I'd be urging you to do in that space. Yeah.
But building a trial that shows that a system can work is a really good.
Absolutely.
And if it can, as long as we monitor it well and look at what the benefits for congestion or whatever it might be, it would be a really interesting model to partner with a charitable trust, because the government wants us to bring in private money.
Yes. Yeah.
And it would, and the advantages of the tax deductibility and everything else that provides, as opposed to rates, is certainly would be a really good way to get businesses investing in it in a better way.
Absolutely. And at the moment we're embarking on a project, a large project, where we're aiming to have 50% of businesses with a travel plan for their staff for commuting.
Great.
By 2028, which is fairly ambitious. Just to clarify, that's businesses with more than 5 employees, so obviously a lot of sole traders in Queenstown and Wanaka. And so that's the thing where we've got to start thinking about how that kind of project could tie in, because obviously use of the bus is a major part of that shift. And so these are all conversations that need to be had. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
You referenced about the growth in Kingston
Yes,
and the future growth, but currently, is there any community transport and from the commercial sector, the private sector currently, or do people who work or need to get to Queenstown on a daily basis or periodically or whatever, essentially carpool and if they haven't got access to a car, or how does that work at the moment?
Well, that's a great question, Councillor Noon, because we're currently working with the Kingston Community Association to try and organise transport for their seniors. So they were being transported by St John's, but unfortunately that's ended. And so now none of their seniors can make it into Queenstown regularly to get groceries or medicines, prescriptions and visit the doctor. So that's something we're actually working on behind the scenes. Currently, people drive individually or they carpool, and they're the only options. So a ferry is a great idea, takes the pressure off the road. It doesn't have to be a bus, but there are things that could easily be activated out in that space.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Cheers.
much.
Thanks for being here with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.